Search Kings has.
33. Record low is 9 degrees with low set in
19 Google reviews. No wonder Google hand-selected Search Kings as a
monthly
Google
total
Premier
at 0.1.
and they're Canadian. You want to
This
stand
is
out with your customers or online?
I be sitting, I'm winning. They don't like it. Yeah, I bet. Get it clean and that hard and that chest. Said it, I'ma get that finish. I be sitting, I'm winning. They don't like it. Yeah, I bet. Get it pain and that hard and that chest. Versus 5 that I'm leaving unidentified. Just had to drop it on my enterprise. Shell cases in the wet, they had to check it twice. Think my OG for that shit, they can get it right. Yeah, this about to be a genocide. More than what we did, but I can never die. The reason why you fight is because you never got it.
Saturday Night Bandstand with David Clinton Thomas, 1966, Brainwash here on Saturday Night Bandstand. I had a chance to chat with David Clinton Thomas back in the spring.
He just told us what is and isn't in the vaccine.
Go on tour with his new album called Say Something. Of course, those concerts have been put on hold, but he says he's anxious to get back on stage. In the meantime, spending time with family. Got a great 70s set for you coming up in just a matter, but
well, what too?
Lisa Bridges and Bond all coming up on Zoomer Radio Saturday.
Some concerns given the importance of this economy.
We ask people about who should and shouldn't take the vaccine, and then.
I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it. Yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Watch you said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it. Yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. I love the rain when it falls, yeah, I'm blessed. Of the fame and the cars and the jets. I had them thinking I was gone to the psych ward. I never left to live the life you would die for. Hell, I can't save her, I'm no lifeguard. Maybe you can get the deed, but I might charge. Pull up to the spot, they're like, who is that there? Hands up, give me the loot like a cashier. What you thought, are you dumb? I don't play shit. I killed you and your brother with the same clip. All that bullshit you've been talking, boys, ancient. I'm a different man now, leave you faceless. Watch you said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it. Yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Watch you said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it. Yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Yo, versus 5, then I'm leaving unidentified. Just a rental, had to drop it off at Enterprise. Shell casings in the whip, had to check it twice. I think my OGs for that shit, they give good advice. Yeah, this about to be a genocide. These motherfuckers want me dead, but I can never die. I'm the reason why your wife said she met a guy. 2 minutes in a swisher just to get inside. Yeah,
Are you on the run?
Oh no.
Yeah, y'all ain't know what it is. All I have in this. Yeah, we real for the street niggas, man. They told me them Wicks and niggas is better than me. They told me them G-Way niggas is better than me. They told me them region niggas is better than me. Got this devil in me. I don't see my enemies a miles away. I'm up the niche, I had a child today. Product of environments and alleyways. Like why these rappers wanna blame me? They suck more dick than Sam G. I had to get to I had to give it to him. About 5 times my drama made the notes in my videos. Won't get 100,000 of films on the south side. I recognize the G-Way, Region Park, and Southside Chain. That's where the demons walk. Rats for barrels by the meter long. Tears in your eyes when you see your mom. Like the boys not free, bro. Freedom comes. Go catch me some Matt first PP cut. Fuck boys, right? You didn't think we gon' throw some shots? Fuck niggas. Same vodka, bitch. This is a Mac 10 beat. What's wrong with him? Oh, that next little youth with Down syndrome. They're like 5 foot nothing. Some boy, they better watch out. Get slapped down, divide a shot, then my nigga swinging back round, then you go, and then a Mac go ring, and it's fully automatic. Them niggas are so melodramatic, go ring, and it's fully automatic. Them niggas are so melodramatic, so emotional. Niggas suspicious, trust that they must be hoes.
Communication screw-ups. Welcome to Mignod Matters, a podcast about...
Hey. Batman. 19 shoot in the back. Hey. Why just Batman to the 19? I know the sun was down about 20 degrees and we are expecting degrees. Snow showers.
Slow showers, minus 20.
Niggas don't love you, that's a fact. Them act no cheese, God bless me, no sneeze. Niggas see me and freeze. Jordy no shit, please don't strap the slap. They moving like he's stacked to the rack, just rack. Put them in a box, no jack, no one team, never need a pack. Hey, niggas know me from north to the south. Never need no one, make my own club. Southside, reach apart, nigga, that's my road. Niggas selling drugs, man, I'm in a drought. They all know what I'm about. Stuck in red, talk shit, catch sled to the head. Off the shits, no meds, never fuck on the red. Stay away from the feds, on the streets, no bad. Hey, deep water, I drank, I'm slow, no sled. I swamp me head, this day I dread. Bitch gave me head, see my strap, they fled. Hey, I know they said I don't be shit when I was in the ditch. Now pussy, I'm rich, they low, don't switch, they solid one bitch. See the flick of the wrist, I'm awesome shit, talk shit, get hit, fake funk on me lit. I keep my stick, I let it flick just like a dick. I'm in his house like old Saint Nick. She want my dick, she know I'm sick. I ain't a crip, that crack I nip. I hit his lip if he talking shit. Fuck his click and fuck his gang. I'll hit the 3 just like I'm dang. She wanna kang that 40 I bang. If he own my gang, them hollows dang. My shorty's pang, she loves when I sang. She feels the pain, I'm in the rain. Hit a stain if that means getting paid. And this my click, you getting late. I'm in the trap, the cops did a raid. I got that work, you know it's a great.
Help is on the way. The Special Investigations Unit, the province's police watchdog, has now taken over the investigation. I'm Michelle Mackey.
Toronto police are providing more information on a deadly shooting last Sunday that killed a 20-year-old man in the Jane and 401 area. They say 20-year-old Hashim Omar Hashi was returning home from dinner with friends when he was approached by at least 2 suspects in a vehicle. One of them got into the car and opened fire on Hashi. Detective Sergeant Ted Leomanis says investigators are trying to understand the motive.
What I do want to get out to the media today is that Mr. Hashi was not involved in any gang activity, nor was he involved in any gang affiliation. Mr. Hashi was a student studying accounting and worked part-time at the airport. He had a promising future, and he was a very well
And in an effort to address the violence in North York, police say they are increasing patrols in the area and have ongoing dialogue with housing partners and the community. And anyone with information is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 8:35. Another significant COVID-19 milestone has been passed in the country today as Canada passed 800,000 cases. Federal government data showing our current case count at 801,057. The national count was led by daily reports from Quebec and Ontario that added 1,204 cases and 1,388 cases, respectively. It's been 3 weeks since Canada passed a separate milestone, hitting 700,000 cases in mid-January, and new infections have slowed down since then, but
Health officials advise the emergence of new virus variants means we must continue following protective measures to contain the spread.
A gradual reopening of Ontario's economy is set to begin next week. However, stay-at-home orders will be extended for another week, and we're expected to get a formal announcement from the Premier on Monday. That's when sources tell 680 News the state of emergency will expire. According to the plan, the province will have an emergency break in place to allow the government to quickly move a region into lockdown if cases jump up again. The current stay-at-home order will remain in place in much of the province until each region transitions back into a color-coded framework that allows the province to rank health units based on case numbers and trends. The phased reopening of the economy will start in 4 regions where transmission of the virus is low.
And as thousands of students across the province get ready to go back to in-class learning come Monday, the ministry has revealed how much hiring has been done across all the school boards. Spokesperson for the Ministry of Education tells 680 News in efforts to fight COVID-19 and to reduce class sizes, the province has hired around 3,400 new teachers, 1,400 custodians, and 620 public health nurses. But Laura Walton, president of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions, says the new hires have yet to be seen by the frontline staff. Walton says a Freedom of Information request has been filed to find out more, but it was denied.
I am not sure why it's so difficult to provide to us exactly board by board how many people have been hired. There should be some accountability here, not just a matter of money going out or money being claimed, but exactly how much money is being used, where are those hires, and what do those hires entail across the province.
The province says it will continue to invest in education to ensure students are safe and supported.
680 News Time, 8:37. The European Union's hardest hit COVID country now leads the way for vaccines in the Union, except for older people.
After overcoming vaccine supply problems, 1 million Italians have now been vaccinated, more than any other EU country. But Italy has been slow in getting them to the over 80s because so few older people here are in assisted living. COVID data expert Matteo Villa.
I mean, clearly, many more older people in Italy stay at home or are cared by their households. So it's harder to reach out.
Some 7 million, or about 12% of Italians, are expected to be fully vaccinated by the end of March. Megan Williams, ABC News, Rome.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 8:38. A Vancouver-based leader for Myanmar's oppressed Rohingya minority is expressing concern about the fate of her country and people in the wake of this month's military takeover.
Praying for these people, if that's possible.
A founder and former president of the Canadian-based Rohingya Human Rights Network, Yasmin Ullah, says she is watching with growing concern as the internet and other forms of communication slowly disappear in Myanmar in the wake of the February 1st coup, with civilian leaders, including Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, now detained by the military. She says she would like to see more action in Canada, and not just from Ottawa.
Looking at this issue and educating yourself about it would be priority number 1, because there's a lot of complexity, but it's also quite straightforward.
Ullah says by understanding the situation, people here can pressure lawmakers to take further action she helped spearhead in The Hague last year, which saw her group help convince the International Court of Justice to order the Myanmar government to offer official protection to the Rohingya minority. I'm Amanda Warwick.
And coming up in 30 seconds, we'll take a look at those gas prices. 680 News Time, 8:39.
Everybody's looking for a change right now, dreaming of being able to pay for upgrades or renovations.
Looking for spare change.
When she came to Canada in the early 80s, it was to find a better life. You know, she lived through the Vietnam War, and nowhere in her imagination or just scope of thinking did she think this would be possible for her to showcase her heritage and just who she is on this kind of scale. So she feels incredibly special. I think she's very humbled by the experience, and she's feeling pretty darn good about herself, as you should. She really
as she should, because that's a beautiful thing. And kind of what you just mentioned about your mother's generation and kind of what her expectation was and what was possible or what wasn't possible.
sometimes.
You're listening to my interview with Catherine Gray and Alexander Rosenberg from Blown Away on Netflix. Can you describe to me the heartbreak that must follow working on a piece for hours? It's hot. The glory hole is burning up. It's a tense situation, and a wrong flick of the wrist, and the piece falls apart. Can you describe to me what that's like?
I mean, when it's really surprising, it is kind of heartbreaking. You know, when I can remember working in a studio at an institution where I used to teach that was one wall was just kind of open to the elements. There would sometimes be a moment where like a single snowflake would kind of flutter down and land on this really delicate thing and it's gone. Or, you know, like a piece of sweat, a drop of sweat falls down onto it and ends it. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, most of the kind of failure comes from, you know, I guess like controllable human error, you know. So there is this huge disappointment. Then you're like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have touched it with that cold thing. Like there's a little voice, you know, that says, don't do this. And at the end of the day, it's like we get used to listening to the voice. You know, the voice says, get back in the glory hole, like reheat sooner. You know, like if you listen to the voice, the stuff doesn't happen as much.
The average person, I don't think, knows that much about it. They have an image of what it might be. What do you hope people take away?
I think it's just exciting for me and for much.
Going to be transparent that it's not authentic and that's not successful for them in the long run.
Mm-hmm. And like, I know for me, like I remember 2 years ago, I went across Canada on a media tour talking about Diwali beauty. And like, it feels so good when you can share that piece of your culture with the mainstream. And even this year, like virtually, you know, on the social, I did a whole Diwali beauty segment. And that feels so good because it feels like I'm also bringing people in, non-Indians, like how they can celebrate. And so, you know, as a non-Chinese Canadian, how can we celebrate? Because there's so many things I'm interested in. I'm interested in symbolism, like of the red. This is the year of the off. Like, what do these things mean, and how can we partake as well?
So symbolism is such a big part of Lunar New Year and the Chinese culture, which is what I tap into every single day. Red is a color that you're going to see a lot during Lunar New Year because it represents all the good stuff like prosperity, luck, fortune, happiness, joy, and love, which are things I think are more important than ever. Those are all the colors,
you lying bitch. That's not
not game.
Not all bars are having this issue, however. Co-owner of Duff's famous Wings, Stephen Ehrlich, said,
the money's all gone. Oh, this is the oldies stuff.
Looks at some popular sugar substitutes.
In a most delightful way.
680 News Time 844.
Existing alarm systems or new installations. The monitoring center does it all for the.
Everything sucks. Nothing. Oh, come on.
And the record low is 12, which occurred in 1977. Is at 5:48 p.m. Sunrise.
I show up Saturday morning, and he starts again. No, I don't need a goat because, you know, I have a positive outlook on life, and people who have a positive outlook on life, they survive. So I'm making my quesadilla. I'm like, okay. I finally get it toasted perfectly. I start pouring on the tapatio, and I tell them in Spanish, of course, mira, pa, look, Dad, you got to stop this. And if you're not going to pay attention to yourself, if you don't care about yourself, then how about care about your children? How about care about your grandson who you have not been
delivered or get free curbside pickup.
Has only been able to see through a window, and especially within our family, it was known, no dejen a Lorenzo, don't let Lorenzo get close to his mom because he's the one who likes to go out and doesn't believe it. And that finally put some sense into him with the vaccine. By then, though, he was already wearing a mask, thank God.
So you finally get him out the door. Thank goodness, good job. The vaccination site you went to, it's in a majority Latino city. Thankfully, you were able to get an appointment without too much difficulty. Your sister was able to set it up. It was staffed mostly by Latinos, but what did you see when you get there?
Oh, it was super white. We were in Santana, which is one of the most Latino big cities in the United States. We're talking about 80% Latino population. And of course, everyone over 65, the people who were going to get the vaccine, but overwhelmingly white. There was one moment where I noticed everyone was wearing the North Face fleece jackets. You know, they're retirees, baby boomers. And my dad's in cowboy boots and a Pendleton jacket. I'm wearing Dickies shorts, you know, baggy Dickies shorts and huaraches all worn out. It was the first time I had actually felt like a quote-unquote Mexican in a long time. I actually had to remember, when was the last time I felt so out of place as a Mexican? And sadly, it was at a vaccination station for COVID-19. Like, Mexicans should not be feeling out of place right now.
And why do you think that is? I mean, I'm sure you didn't obviously go up interviewing people there, but why do you think that is? Why do you think that there are, as we've said, the community has been particularly hard hit? We've just reported on this.
I mean, the most immediate thing is that it is so hard to get a vaccination, at least in Orange County, California, where I'm based. You have to do it online. Actually, you have to download an app. And if you're a person of color, especially elderly, you probably don't even have access to the internet. My dad, he still has a flip phone. He does not have a smartphone. And if you don't have children who are internet, versed in the internet and able to try to get an appointment hour after hour after hour, you're going to be out of luck. I can't speak for the rest of the United States, but at least in California, it's been mostly online. And until that's able to be rectified, then you're going to have these terrible disparities, these inequities, really, racial and economic inequities when it comes to the vaccine.
So before that you go, I'm guessing that there are a lot of people in the same spot that you were in, struggling to convince a loved one to get the vaccine, talk them out of conspiracies or whatever, surrounding it. What would you tell them?
Be persistent and be as honest as possible. And sadly, what also helped out my dad was the fact that in the early days, he knew no one who had gotten coronavirus. In recent months, people have been dying that he grew up with. My sister's godfather died just a couple of weeks ago. So at that point, it's a little bit more real to them, and just tell them, like, look, it's not even about you. It's about your family. It's about society. If you want to get the United States, the world back to some semblance of normalcy, then you have to take the vaccine. And I think when you put it in such stark terms, and you do it with love, you don't do it out of shame. You can shame people you don't know, I guess, but people you do know, it has to come from a place of love and persistence and patience. And I think, especially if your family member ultimately loves you, they'll do it. They will do it.
And he does have to go for his second shot, right? He got the Moderna vaccine. So do you have any sense of how he feels about going back for his second shot? You're going to have to love shame him for the second one?
No, he got it. And, as I wrote in my story, we had to wait 15 minutes to make sure he had no allergic reactions or turn into a Bill Gates zombie. And he came out clear, so he's fine.
That was Los Angeles Times columnist Gustavo Arellano. His latest column is about convincing his father to get vaccinated. It's titled, My Dad Was a...
Research shows that this food reward pathway is missing in artificial sweeteners due to the lack of calories. The extreme and unnatural sweetness encourages appetite and cravings for more sugary foods, creating a dependence. If you can control your sugar cravings, then sweeteners may result in a modest weight loss. Studies also show that sweeteners can increase the risk of diabetes type 2, heart disease, and stroke, also known as metabolic syndrome. If you have cravings or poor blood sugar control, Ditch the sweeteners. With Food Bites, I'm Rose Reisman.
Stateside, Stacey Plaskett couldn't cast a vote last month when the House impeached former U.S. President Donald Trump, but she can help prosecute him. Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett serves as the House delegate from the U.S. Virgin Islands. She couldn't participate in the House impeachment vote against former President Trump, but she still has a voice in the trial. Selected by the House Speaker as the first manager of a presidential impeachment team from a U.S. territory.
Virgin Islanders are always looking for space to be a part of this America and try to make it better, even without a vote.
Representative Plaskett will also be the only Black woman in the Senate chamber next week when she helps present evidence to senators who will vote whether to convict the former president on the charge he incited an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Michelle Franzen, ABC News. 6 City News Time, 8:50.
It is normalized pointing out the minority. This is going to be the only black person there. Black woman. It's normalized pointing people out. She's going to be the only black woman there. Okay, what was the point of telling us that?
One-shot deal of me going into the school, and also just for people who are serious about Black Canadian history, is give them a destination where they can go to and learn about things, because too often in Black History Month we just focus on the same thing. You know, for so many years with Martin Luther, Rosa Parks, and now in Canada we talk a lot about violence. But my thing is, maybe we should go a little bit deeper. Why don't we find out about other people? And when we talk about Viola Desmond, can we talk about how she was a Black female entrepreneur, things like that? And then the other part where you were alluding to too is we're running a conference, Northern Power Summit, and that focuses on Black 365 too. So that is also going to empower artists with some of the tools that they can succeed, but also talk about what it's like to be a person of color, BIPOC, in the Canadian music industry.
Mm-hmm. Very important conversations for sure.
Yeah.
And I got a sneak peek at, like, you know, talking about what you said, getting deeper into people's stories. Some of those keynote speakers who are going to be involved in this event. Can you share some of those names right now?
Yeah, we've got some amazing people. I mean, we've got Deja Espy, who is creating so much noise. It's great when you see a billboard right downtown from Spotify just promoting their success.
That was amazing. Yeah, shout out to Deja. Sorry, I love Deja.
That's okay. And you know, they performed at our event last year too, and blew everybody away. So we'd like to kind of bring some people back in different capacities. This time they're going to be speaking. And then we got Indidi Cascade representing Western Canada, Vancouver, Terrell Safety from out there. And then we got Four Corners, DJ for the Raptors. We got Drew, originally from In Essence, who's been doing it for years. We got Shad, and we've got the Godfather of Canadian hip hop, Maestro Fresh West.
Amazing. Like, that's just different generations, that's touching different angles, like that's and different parts of the country, which is so important too, that we really have this spread out. So that's awesome. Now, we were joking about, you know, being virtual and we're not in the studio and all the tech stuff we're trying to figure out. The pandemic is affecting everything, but for you and for your state-driven motivational tours, how has the pandemic affected that?
I wasn't sure how it was going to affect me. I sent out a booking email, and I booked 70 shows. And every one is a new experience. So today I was performing, and they had set it up as a Zoom meeting as opposed to a webinar. And for those unfamiliar with tech, it meant that I was freestyling and rapping in the introduction while having to admit people into the Zoom room. So I'm rapping, admit. And somehow I still was able to do it. And I think that's the cool thing, is that everybody just kind of realizes it's challenging for everyone. Like, you know, I'm a parent. I got 2 kids that are doing homeschooling, and it's tough for my kids to do it, but it's very tough for the teachers, because I hear kids in the background yelling and screaming. They have to mute their mics. They're in the chat.
Yeah.
And it's tough for parents. You know, there's been a state of emergency, and for parents, a lot of times we're working from home, and our kids are over there, and we're trying to watch our kids, but we're trying to work, and we're trying to juggle. So it's tough.
Definitely.
Yeah. I gotta tell you another funny story now, because we all have kids. My daughter's in kindergarten, and one of the kids shouted out that I think my mommy's pregnant. We're going to the doctor today to find out. She's like, I don't think you should tell her.
Wow.
We're learning a lot about each other in these pandemic days. I'll tell you that much.
I'm telling you. It's crazy. That's amazing.
Anyways, back to you. You have been busy during this pandemic. You are putting the finishing touches on your new studio album, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm really excited about it because 20 years ago this year, I came up with my debut CD. If you guys remember CDs.
I'm from the cassette era, so I don't see it there.
So 20 years ago, I came out with it, and it was called Stay Driven. And that was the name of my school program after that, too. So the new album is called Still Driven because, to me, it's a testament not to just me, but to other artists and my peers that are still doing this. To be a Canadian rapper is very difficult, so I'm glad I was able to persevere. DO stands for Defy the Odds. I'm still here, so I'm still driven.
Still driven. We love it. And just think about everything that you said with getting deeper into thinking about what does Black History Month mean here and different ways to celebrate it. What is one thing that you hope people take away from Black History Month this year?
To learn something new. It's great to remember another story that you've heard before, but find something new. And whether that means reading a book, whether it means going on blackcanadian365.com or watching a movie, learn something new about Black Canadian history.
Perfect. And I'm sure we're going to be able to do that with Black Canadian 365. So thank you for joining us, Dwayne. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, Dwayne. And for everyone listening, the Northern Power Summit Black 365 session takes place on February 20th.
And that is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us again, Jess, and of course, all of our wonderful guests and the culture crew. Much love. Thank you, Loretta, for holding down the fort. Guys, wherever you are, do not childhood conversations anywhere, anytime. Subscribe on Google or Apple Podcasts. Cheers.
To sell the Super Bowl with things a lot different.
We're expecting a lot of takeout and delivery, obviously in Ontario, especially with dine-in restrictions as they are. We think we'll sell in excess of 100,000 wings on Sunday alone.
So 100,000 wings, how does that compare with prior years?
Pretty much on par. The demand and pre-ordering we've seen has been really strong. As we like to say, Super Bowl is like the Super Bowl of Super Bowls for us.
Well, I'm fascinated by this that you say it's going to be, you're anticipating selling pretty much the same as prior years. Is that right? How is that going to be the case with everything changed this year?
We have great
hangs out in the restaurant to watch Super Bowl.
In general, our guests and sports fans and just folks who are looking for a familiar experience are going to be craving Super Bowl. It's one of those things. It's the biggest sporting event of the year, and there's a lot of pent-up demand for this. So although we lose that dine-in component, I think we're going to make up for it in what we call off-premise or the takeout and delivery sales. As I said, I think we'll be producing as many as we can in terms of the volumes that we do.
That's Royal Messenger, the VP of Marketing at St. Louis Bar and Grill, and at the Business Center on Richardson.
When it comes to attracting customers to your business, 680 News has been delivering the goods for decades. Just ask Frank Serpa of Serpa Automotive Group.
We've been advertising on 680 News since 1996. Because we sell various brands, starting from entry-level vehicles to supercars, 680 can provide me with every client for every brand, because 680 News has a lot of great listeners. Also, the other advertisers that are on 680.
Start packing. Since the dawn of time, humans have been pursuing food. First in open plains and lush forests, and later in the crowded aisles of grocery stores. Today, that pursuit is over. With good food, you can get delicious, ready-to-cook meals. Tortellini delivered right to your home.
After they
Because some things are
history.
Is working for you. Call 680 News Advertising at 416-935-NEWS.
Now, 680 News regional weather conditions for IA Private Wealth, Canada's choice for professional, trusted advice that's uniquely tailored for every stage of your financial journey. Visit
19 has your long-term disability insurance.
Brampton -7, partly cloudy there, and Oakville -8, partly cloudy. 680 News Time, 9 o'clock.
Toronto's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. Radio 640 Toronto, a Chorus Entertainment Company. You're listening to Global News Radio 640 Toronto. This is Global News at 9 o'clock.
Canadian Press, I'm Jerry Smith. The country has hit another grim COVID-19 milestone. Canada has now recorded more than 800,000 infections since the start of the pandemic. The national tally crossed the threshold Saturday, led by daily reports from Quebec and Ontario that added 1,204 and 1,388 cases, respectively. The federal figures show 801,057 total cases and 20,702 deaths. Still, the country's leading physician says there are hopeful signs, with case counts and hospitalizations gradually moving lower. At the same time, Dr. Teresa Tam stresses it's crucial strong measures remain to maintain that trend. Police say a woman has died and 3 other people, including 2 children, are in hospital following an incident in East Gwillimbury, Ontario, that also left the suspect dead. Ontario's police watchdog is investigating the death of the suspect, a man the Special Investigations Unit has said was shot by police. Officers were called about a stabbing Saturday afternoon and arrived at a home to find the woman dead. Another woman, a young child, and a baby were taken to hospital. They're not disclosing the extent of those injuries. Police do not believe there is any public threat. Nova Scotia Liberals have chosen former Provincial Forestry Minister Ian Rankin as their next leader and the future Premier of the province. He got just over 52% of the vote after the 3-candidate race went to a second ballot. Rankin promises to be...
Every Nova Scotian has a role in building our future. Whether you're a union member or a business owner, whether you live in downtown Halifax or in a rural community, whether you work in an office, on the land, or on the sea, or if you work or are a student or are retired, I'll be calling on your skills, your experience, and your expertise.
Rankin was the youngest candidate in the race at 37 and cited both his youth and commitment to environmental issues as assets during his bid for the party's top job. U.S. President Joe Biden's first weekly presidential address featured a phone call.
The White House weekly address revived and revamped.
Hello.
Michelle.
Hi, Mr. President.
President Biden focusing on his COVID rescue package, choosing to call Roseville, California resident Michelle Volker after she wrote him a letter.
How are you, Michelle?
Well, I wrote to you because, I was laid off in July, and it's just been a tough time as far as trying to find work.
The president trying to sell his $1.9 trillion rescue package to Americans and Congress. Republicans say the price tag is too steep. Democrats are moving ahead using reconciliation, which means they can pass the bill with or without Republican support. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
This is the Canadian Press. In sports, the Raptors looking for a 4th straight win, taking on the Hawks in Atlanta. They're playing 24 hours after they beat Brooklyn 123-117. The games are part of a 6-game road trip for and White scored his team's lone goal.
Ils sont de plus en plus sollicités. Et malgré la forte demande, leur set...
Au cours de la dernière année, explique Jasmine Dixon, présidente de l'Association des sages-femmes de l'Ontario.
The front passenger side of that vehicle and ran up to Mr. Hashi's passenger side vehicle and fired multiple gunshots.
He was pronounced dead on scene, and Leo Manis says the suspect vehicle was found 4 hours later engulfed in flames at Earl Bales Park. Police believe Hashi had no gang connections, and anyone with information is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
680 News Time 9:05. Canada has passed another sobering milestone. According to federal government data, more than 800,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported in the country since the start of the global pandemic. The national tally crossed the disheartening threshold on Saturday, with Ontario and Quebec adding 1,388 and 1,204 cases, respectively, to the national count. The data also shows 20,702 Canadians have died from COVID-19. And while it appears the national rate of infection is slowing, Dr. Theresa Tam says it's crucial that strong measures are kept in place in order to maintain a steady downward trend. She also warns new variants could rapidly increase daily case counts. So far, Ontario has reported over 153 cases, including a COVID-19 variant, including one of the strain first found in South Africa.
And coming back to Ontario, students across the province are heading back to class beginning next week, including Halton and Durham regions, but concerns about staff levels are being...
Have you ever thought about owning physical gold?
This week in an extraordinary conversation on famous lost words. And what else have we got, Tom? Christopher, in episode 102, that's our second episode of our first season, we featured an interview with myself and Mick Jagger from 2001, and it was a lot of fun. And I knew that we have a lot of other Rolling Stones clips, including Mick Jagger clips, and we played a lot of them for you on this very...
Premier Ford is expected to announce the reopening of the economy upcoming on Monday.
This is All News Radio. CFTR. She helped lead the charge at the International Court of Justice last year to have the actions against her people declared a genocide. Now, as 680's Amanda Warwick explains, a Vancouver-based champion for the cause of the Rohingya says she's deeply concerned about the fate of those caught up in the turmoil of the military coup in her native Myanmar.
Yasmin Ullah sat and watched last year in The Hague as the ICJ declared that the civilian government of Myanmar is obligated to protect her people, the Rohingya. Now she watches from Vancouver as that same government has been overthrown and the military general accused of spearheading the crackdown on her people starting in 2017 now takes control of the country.
A lot of fear around internet shutdowns. There has already been several attempts of internet bans.
Ullah, who is the founder of the Rohingya Human Rights Network, believes a lack of firm international action is also emboldening the military in Myanmar to remain steadfast in detaining the civilian government. She's calling on people in Canada to reach out to local lawmakers and ask them to take up the cause. I'm Amanda Warwick.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 9:07. Earlier this week, Mayor John Tory unveiled the City of Toronto's Black Community COVID-19 response plan. Tory says it was developed in response to data released late last year that revealed the highest rates of COVID-19 cases in Toronto, at 26% were among Black people of African and Caribbean descent. He says vaccine hesitancy is also an issue within the Black community.
Vaccine hesitancy, which would cause people to be hesitant even to go to a place we might have established for the administration of a vaccine when the time comes, hopefully not too long from now. Vaccine hesitancy is high among Black residents. And that means we have to do everything possible to provide them with the information they need to get around and get over that hesitancy.
The city has also partnered with community agencies to provide COVID-19 health and safety awareness in Black communities and work with experts to prepare for and support immunization. It has also created the Black Scientist Task Force on Vaccine Equity. 680 News Time, 9:08.
Honor, change, and impact.
These are the filters of the GTA. This is Black History Month, and 680 News is telling the stories of those in the Black community who've been key in making our communities better places to live. 680's Camille Wilson is speaking with Jamal McLaurin.
We all know Jamal McLaurin after he went viral with his infamous paper-cut megaphone at the NBA Finals in 2019. But this North American gem was also the very first Canadian to ever play for the only Canadian basketball team. McLaurin said there is no better way to express how he felt about playing for the city that he grew up loving and knowing.
One of the highlights of my career, being able to be the first Canadian to play on a Canadian team. I've always dreamt that one day I'd have the opportunity to play with the Toronto Raptors in my final year of my career was definitely a blessing.
McGlory didn't only play for the Toronto Raptors, but he became the second Canadian-born in history to play in the NBA All-Star Games.
It's something that doesn't happen too often.
McGlory, who is now the assistant Raptors coach and community ambassador, has also had the chance to represent Toronto in other areas.
I was also fortunate enough to coach the NBA All-Star Game twice. Once with Coach Casey being on his staff representing Toronto, and once with Coach Nurse representing Toronto. So I've not only been able to play in the NBA All-Star Game, I've been able to coach too.
I'm Camille Wilson.
Gas prices coming up in just 30 seconds.
This is 680 News.
You might not know what the future holds, but at Seneca, we know what it needs. It needs you.
Seneca, we're training you for careers that don't even exist yet. Like Uber alcohol delivery person.
Mostly for the first time, Tina Fey hosting live from New York's Rainbow Room. Amy Poehler hosting from their normal spot at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills. And it's expected the nominees will appear from locations around the world, just on screens like at the Emmys, I guess. The nominations always have to be taken with a grain of salt, though, because they rarely reflect any sort of critical or even audience consensus. It's maybe the most entertaining TV show of award season, but most people don't really take them seriously like they do the Oscars as far as awards go. For example, Jared Leto is nominated for Best Supporting Actor for The Little Things, which we reviewed last week and were disappointed in, and we gave it better reviews than many other critics I read or listened to this past week. Leto has no shot at an Oscar now.
I think once the lights hit from the bill,
Qui m'a touché, puis je trouve que
Self-employed, no proof of income, no problem.
Financial There's still a lot of winter left. Is your furnace up to it? Call Reliance Home Comfort for a repair or replacement. We're here 24/7, and we'll get there fast. Reliance has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and you can count on our commitment to safety precautions. And remember to ask about our next day or we pay installation guarantee. Call today and save 30% off our featured furnace. Get a great furnace deal now. Reliance. Conditions apply. Savings off our regular price. See website for details.
Time 9/11. Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Colette Desjardins.
And this report brought to you by 407 ETR. So far, so good. Everything is lightly traveled on all the highways around the GTA. I'm just looking at the QEW right now, and it's smooth sailing both ways between Burlington and Mississauga. No problems in Oakville either on the QEW both ways. The Gardner, the Down Valley Parkway is still up to speed as you head into the city or if you're leaving the downtown core. And the 401 across the city, that is in great shape right now, both express.
My colleague. Okay, so then you reviewed that as well, yeah.
it's amazing.
It is amazing.
In that area for this investigation. Download the 407 ETR app today and get personalized updates on your regular routes, instant trip summaries, and more. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Your next traffic report is coming up at 9:21. But right now, let's get the forecast. Jason Frazier.
See a little bit of cloud cover before midnight. I think it's after midnight that we could see some snow developing. And it's going to be a chilly night as we'll see wind chills anywhere between 15 to about 20 degrees. That's how it will feel. And that's not going to be the air temperature. The air temperature tomorrow will reach a high of -4 degrees. And we'll continue to see some flurries and some light snow in the early morning hours. I'm expecting anywhere between a coating to up to 2 centimeters possible. Not a whole lot. I think by the afternoon time, we'll start to see some clearing as well. And then tomorrow night, partly cloudy with a low near -13 degrees. So overnight low tonight, -9 degrees.
And we're a little higher than that low right now at -16, but it feels like -14. We've got a few clouds out in that downtown Toronto sky. Pearson International Airport, also a few clouds and a little bit chillier, -8, feeling like -14. In about 60 seconds, we'll take a quick look at your top stories. After that, we're going to take a look at sports. 680 News Time.
You're not going to go over the top stories.
Hamilton on Disney Plus, which is just somebody, they put cameras in front of the Broadway play while it was on and taped it and put it on Disney Plus, and apparently that counts. Well, that's very much surprised me, and I don't know how it doesn't just.
So you can accelerate.
many national brand tires, but cost up to 50% less. So we figure M should represent money. A, the added peace of mind in Salen's 30-day risk-free trial. R, for being reliable. And T, for delivering traction when you need it most. Drive smart this season on Salen's Ice Blazer winter tires and take Salen with you through every turn. Find a dealer near you at salentires.ca.
Start your weekdays with.
Could try selling those, in the summer, fall, something like that.
Do this for a living. They had never. That's how. If they're in the dark, what chance do the rest of us have? I don't know, but that's something to look for on VOD next Tuesday. Apparently, a movie called Palm Springs on Amazon Prime Video, starring Andy Samberg and Christina Milioti. They meet at a wedding in Palm Springs. Comedy ensues. There's also a twist in that I won't spoil. I don't know that it's a spoiler, but if
well, then shut up, stupid. Even I don't know.
Mostly to a chorus of boos from Democrats. Do you see any downside to going too big here? I mean, I think Summers' concern is basically that if you do too much now, it's going to take up space that limits what you can do. Or other spending that's focused not on immediate relief but long-term investment in the economy. And so that could be either through a political channel where basically you use up the willingness to do borrowing and spending, or, I mean, it doesn't have to be a currency crisis like Megan describes there, but if the borrowing does have effects that lead to higher interest rates, then maybe the political environment around borrowing becomes less favorable because of that, because it's more expensive to borrow, and then it interferes with the ability to do the infrastructure package. Do you worry about that at all?
You can borrow it anyway.
It's not going to surprise you that I disagree with Larry Summers. I have been hearing about the inflation boogeyman being just around the corner since the Great Recession. And we just haven't ever reached that corner. This has never been a problem in the last decade, and I don't suspect that it will be in the future. The interest rates are and debt service as a percentage of the overall debt is at a pretty historic low. Interest rates are very low right now, and that is a good time to borrow. What Summers is saying is that we're going to crowd out future needs in terms of public investment, things like infrastructure. There is a plan, if you talk to the Biden people, to do that package with the second reconciliation bill that you were talking about. And keep in mind that the entire Biden tax plan, which would reverse many of the Trump tax cuts to the tune of trillions of dollars, is also on the table. So I'm not even sure that very large infrastructure plan will even be, I think a lot of it will be offset. So it just doesn't seem like this is a constraint. And, then we get into this issue of targeting, which has been a big topic of discussion this week. The Biden team is considering making the eligibility, the means test on these direct payments much tighter. It's based on some research by Raj Chetty and others who show that the money wasn't immediately spent on the last stimulus check. To me, that doesn't really tell you much of anything. It doesn't mean that that money wasn't useful to those individuals, and maybe they spent it at the end of the month. Just because they didn't spend it the day that they got it doesn't mean that it wasn't helpful. And the bigger problem here is that the federal government does not have the data right now to actually target very well. We are going to put out these checks based on 2019 tax data because that's all we have at the moment until the 2020 tax season opens. And what that means is that that's pre-pandemic. And we're going to say that if you made $50,000 a year in 2019, that's the cutoff, even if you lost your job in March and didn't have it for the rest of the year. If we really want to do this with targeting and making sure that the money only goes to people who really, really need it, why don't you give everyone a check now and then claw it back in the next tax year using the correct data of what people actually earned? That seems to me to be the only fair way to do this.
I want to ask a little bit about the inflation boogeyman, because I have not been very worried about this for the last decade, and I'm not very worried about it now. But we have seen over the last year that inflation expectations have continued to tick up. If you look at one market way to look at this is you compare the interest rates on 10-year government bonds to the 10-year government bonds that are adjusted for inflation. You can get a sense of what people expect the inflation rates will be over the next decade. And that number keeps going up. It's now over 2%, around 2.2. Which obviously is not a real high number. It's a little bit higher than the Fed's inflation target. The Fed has said that it wants to allow inflation to run somewhat above its target for some period. So I don't think this is a worry now. But David, I'm just wondering if that continues to go up, and at the margin, the more deficit spending you do, that should put upward pressure on that, especially with the Fed being so accommodative. Does there need to be a political plan about what to do if inflation does come back for the first time in so long? I mean, at least, I'm not saying that we need to desperately avoid any policies that could cause inflation, but it seems like people experiencing that for the first time in a while, especially seniors who aren't working and so wouldn't be enjoying the wage increases associated with sort of an economy that's running hot. What do you do about the fact that that's going to arise as a public opinion concern, as a political concern? And I think I think that does conceivably interfere with efforts to do an infrastructure package, because if you have to do those tax provisions you describe to offset whatever new spending you do, then you add the political difficulty of getting people to agree in a very narrow Democratic majority on exactly what tax increases to do. Whereas if you continue to have this very low rate environment, then you can just sort of agree to do more deficit spending.
That certainly is a political issue, although I think that the Democratic caucus is pretty well aligned on a lot of that stuff. I mean, I would say that inflation has been running below target for close to a decade now, off and on. I mean, for the vast majority of the last decade, inflation has been under that 2% target. If we run it hot,
with a mysterious past, I don't want to fit in anymore, takes on a new mission.
What are you? Some kind
of sorts, and I can't wait for just, it's going to be 7 days of doing absolutely nothing. Just catching up on, Netflix and what not, those things I haven't been able to catch up with. And I think a lot of people are going to do that. It's not just the travel trips are going to reduce. We're going to see a lot of traffic on the internet, a lot of traffic on, on these movie and TV.
They are
live
the ones.
streaming.
Those platforms are the ones to be really prepared. Yeah, they don't want to crash down their own because of the extra flows.
All right, and now we're gonna take a quick break with Oasis, and the song is "Let There Be Love," playing right here.
Again, you're good. You're gonna do that every time you think I'm trying to do something.
To help reach your vision of retirement. And as you grow, this flexible plan can grow with you, so you can enjoy what's important to you today as you get closer to your retirement goals tomorrow. Get started at scotiabank.com/aria and learn more about the Scotia Aria Retirement.
Force can bring up
the angry
the worst in human behavior. If you're worried about losing your children, selecting the right lawyer will have a major effect on your case and your life. Brian Ludmer understands your situation. With extensive experience in both family law and business law, Brian Ludmer, author of The High Conflict Custody Battle, offers a better perspective on solutions so that your children don't suffer in the process. And that makes him the ideal choice. Brian Ludmer. Visit ludmerlaw.com. That's ludmerlaw.com.
There's going to be an 8-second delay every time I
We
give
might
it an
not know what
input.
the future holds, but at Seneca, we know what it needs.
Every time I click on this here, as soon as I get to here,
Who's satisfied waiting for change? You, the fixer, the helper, the problem solver. You, who has a career firmly in their sights. You, who waits for no one. You, who wants to.
I don't think these idiots have any sense of self-preservation, anything. You hear the song, I'm coming after you on a carousel. What are you doing? Up and down, mounted police, cover. You're not listening. You're not listening. You're perusing message boards to, I don't know why, but they are in fact related to child pornography. They have to be, or you wouldn't be finding this shit. That's why they're posting these cut and paste codes up to harass us. We know this. You're doing nothing new. We've been doing this since like '87 on the computers. You're not impressing us. You know how to trade files that no one in their right mind should want to have. You know how to make them too. Yeah, that's real classy, but it doesn't make you a hacker. You keep pointing, you're waving the flag. Look at me, I'm a pedophile, and I'm going to fight for the rights of pedophiles. Is what you're doing when you attack this fucking system. This is the only reason it's here. I don't give a fuck, or there'd be some sort of security on it. Well, I mean, you're a script kiddie. You're not hacking into anything. You're just interfering with someone trying to watch TV, which is something else you guys specialize in, is harassing small children through their devices and looking for open Wi-Fi cameras and shit. Because somehow you're not catching the drift that like, I know the camera's on because you went to a website that isn't barred from workplaces and schools to find this. So I don't understand why you bothered. Nobody gives a fuck about you except putting you in a fucking hole in the ground. No one has feelings for you. You're not fighting the right fight. You're perusing message boards to find these cut-and-paste codes.
You didn't go to that expensive restaurant that day. Feng Chao.
We all share the journeys that we take. So we've made a commitment to do things the right way and give you our very best. Our best fuel, our best snacks, our best services, our best rewards. And by taking care of what fuels you, you can be your best. Because better drivers make better journeys, and better journeys make a better...
Different variations on the same pathology. That's all you are.
Maybe on the congressional agenda for later this year, but there's another big idea with bipartisan support that could show up there too. Joe Biden has called for child allowance, an unrestricted payment of a few $1,000s per child each year to parents, from deep poverty all the way up to the middle class. It would end up phasing out for high earners. Currently, we have a child tax credit, but in addition to being smaller than this proposed child allowance, you can't get the child tax credit if you're extremely poor, because you have to earn income to qualify for it. Making this allowance available to people with the lowest incomes would significantly reduce child poverty. And now this idea is bipartisan. Mitt Romney is out with a proposal that differs from the Biden plan in its contours, is actually a little bit more generous overall, but that takes the same universal approach that is aimed at poverty reduction. This idea would cost about $100 billion a year. Romney would pay for that in a few ways, including by eliminating the income tax deduction for state and local taxes paid. That deduction, which is a favorite of affluent residents of high-tax blue states, was already significantly curtailed in the 2017 tax law. So, Megan, is this a good idea?
Absolutely.
At one point, they can afford to keep up a daily flight from someplace in Europe to Canada, but a Canadian carrier, because of there's so little traffic, is maybe only flying 4 times a week.
So when is an aid package for Canadian Airlines coming? Kokonis tells me he's not very optimistic.
Some people took that as a note to say, well, the airlines, they voluntarily agreed to suspend service to some destinations because some great aid package is imminent. That's the bullish view. I'm taking the pessimistic view. I mean, November to December, January, 3 months from when Minister Garneau announced that we're going to do something for industry, and we're dying.
Kokonis says the important thing to remember is how these struggles impact not just airlines, but our country's entire tourism sector.
We're going to see some regional airports in Canada go into bankruptcy protection. They make money from user fees. Well, there's no user fee revenue to make if airplanes aren't landing and people aren't going to your airport.
That's Robert Kokonis, the president of aviation advisory firm Airtraff. And at the Business Center, I'm Stuart McGinn.
So, how's your blood pressure? Pretty.
7 Night Bandstand with that great deep baritone voice of the romantic Barry White. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, 1974. Speaking of romance, if you called our Zoomer Radio Valentine's Day hotline and made a song request and a dedication to your favorite Valentine, well, be listening next week. We're going to play as many of those dedications, if not all of them, as we can. And as I say, if you get
Cloudy and -7. Kitchener mostly cloudy and -10. Milton mostly cloudy -8. Mississauga mostly cloudy -7. In Markham mostly cloudy -8. Aurora mostly cloudy -9. Heading a little further east, Oshawa partly cloudy and -7. Pickering mostly cloudy and -7. Let's take a quick little trip back into York region with Richmond Hill mostly cloudy and -8. And now let's look at St. Catharines, mostly cloudy and -6. Now let's come back into the city, which is -7, feeling like -15 in downtown Toronto with a few clouds. And at Pearson International Airport, it is -8, feeling like -14, also with a few clouds. You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 9:30.
Toronto's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
Good evening. This is Saturday, February 6th. I'm Christine Ritchie.
And I'm James Mackin. Here's what's making news this hour.
The SIU is investigating an incident at a home north of the city that left a man and woman dead and sent 3 others, including an infant, to hospital.
Toronto police say they are searching for multiple suspects in the shooting death of a young, promising accounting student.
Renewal, no gimmicks, no fee.
So when you take a drive,
Then taste some fresh ice. You'll see the difference. Oh, and the larger the pieces of ice in your drink, the better. Larger pieces melt slower and dilute your whiskey at a slower pace than smaller pieces.
We talked to a money expert about how to have
That just needs to last a little bit. It's the most water.
Day.
That sounds like a horrible idea.
The Leafs continue to embarrass the Vancouver Canucks on Hockey Night in Canada, while the Raptors trail in the second half in Atlanta. Sports at 45.
And coming up in business, automakers are putting billions of dollars toward charging up the future of electric vehicles. We're looking at those trends and what it could mean for suppliers.
680 News Time, 9:31.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Colette Benjamin.
A very quiet night on the roads tonight, Christine. This report brought to you by 680 News. And right now I'm having a look at the 401 on the cameras right now, the MTO Compass cameras, and I thought I just saw a little bit of a slowdown, but no, it's wide open both ways across the GTA Express and Collectors. If you're traveling on the Don Valley Parkway or the Gardner Expressway, everything is moving well into and out of the downtown core. Haven't heard of any problems on the 410 between Mississauga and the Brampton area. Keep in mind, of course, on the 427, we've got construction, long-term construction, and that's Highway 7 to Zenway shut down both ways on the 427. Looking at the QE, that looks great between Burlington and the Mississauga area. So no problems to speak of right now. In Mount Albert, we have got a police investigation that's been ongoing. So right now, Vivian Creek Road, Ridgegate Crescent lanes are reduced. Your next traffic report at 9:41 right now. Let's get the forecast. Jason Frazier.
It's going to be a cold night, and we're going to see temperatures dipping way below the freezing mark. I'm expecting wind chills to dip down anywhere between 15 to about 20 degrees, and we are expecting to see some cloud cover develop and possibly even some snow showers after the midnight hour. Our overnight air temperature tonight is -9 degrees.
Downtown Toronto, it is -7, feeling like -15 with a few clouds. And at Pearson International Airport, it is -8, feeling like -14 with a few clouds as well. 680 News Time, 9:33.
York Regional Police are investigating a tragic scene at a Mount Albert home in East Gwillimbury where 2 people, including the 37-year-old male suspect, are dead and 3 others have been rushed to hospital with serious injuries.
680's Michelle Mackey joins us with more.
The quiet residential street of Ridgegate Crescent is now the site of a deadly crime scene. York Regional Police say they were called to a home around 2:30 p.m. where a woman was dead and a male suspect was subsequently shot and killed by an officer.
We have an additional adult female who was taken to hospital with injuries, as well as what I'm told was a young child and an infant. And they were all taken to hospital. I don't have an update on the extent of their injuries.
A neighbor who witnessed the chaotic scene on the front lawn of the home says she wanted to help, but the woman warned her to stay away and said the man had a knife.
I didn't know what was happening. I don't know what was going on, but I felt helpless.
It remains unclear what transpired, but police believe this was an isolated incident and there was no threat to public safety. The SIU has now taken over the investigation. I'm Michelle Mackey.
Toronto police are looking for at least 2 suspects, possibly 3, in the shooting death of a 20-year-old accounting student, Ashim Omar Hashi, in North York on January 31st. Detective Sergeant Ted Leomanis says Hashi was killed as he was about to drive into the parking garage at his apartment building at 40 Falstaff Avenue near James Street.
The suspect vehicle approached within seconds behind him. A lone suspect exited the front passenger side of that vehicle and ran up to Mr. Hashi's passenger side vehicle and fired multiple gunshots. The shooter then got into the vehicle, and the vehicle was last seen eastbound Falstaff Avenue.
Police said the suspect's vehicle was found a short time later, fully engulfed in flames at Earlsvale Park. Detectives say there are at least 2 suspects, the driver and the lone shooter in the incident, but they're looking into possibilities. There are more suspects.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 9:35. Ontario will begin to gradually reopen its economy next week, except in the GTA, where stay-at-home orders will be extended for an additional week. Government sources tell 680 News on Monday Premier Ford will make an announcement that the state of emergency that went into effect last month will expire as scheduled on February 9th. The government will transition back into the color-coded framework that ranked regions based on case numbers, but an additional emergency brake will be in place. It will allow the government to quickly move a region into lockdown if it experiences a rapid acceleration in COVID-19 transmission or if the healthcare system becomes overwhelmed. Regions outside of the GTA will be allowed to gradually reopen starting next week, with the GTA following suit the week of February 22nd.
680 News Time, 9:36. Canada has passed a grim milestone on the COVID-19 front today. The country passed 800,000 total COVID-19 cases today. Federal government data showing our current case count at 801,057. It's been 3 weeks since Canada passed another milestone, hitting 700,000 cases in mid-January. We've also had over 20,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Dr. Theresa Tam says the emergence of new virus variants means we must continue to remain vigilant.
And more Ontario students are returning to classrooms on Monday, but many parents are wondering if there will still be enough staff in place to keep those kids safe. This morning, a spokesperson for the province confirmed to 680 News they have hired 3,400 new teachers, 1,400 custodians, and 620 public health nurses. But President of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions, Laura Walton, says staff in the schools say otherwise.
What we're hearing from the front lines is that those folks have not been hired, and they're not in the numbers that is being spoken about. And so we've been told that there has been a survey that shows that these folks have been hired. We have not been able to get the results of those surveys, so we put out a Freedom of Information request, which was denied by the ministry.
The province says it anticipates making more hires and will continue to invest in education to ensure students are safe and supported in schools.
The City of Toronto this week unveiled a specific COVID-19 response plan for the Black community. Public Health Board Chair Joe Cressy says Black people, who make up 9% of Toronto, account for nearly a quarter of hospitalizations due to COVID.
In public health, we've long known that it's your postal code, not your genetic code, that is the biggest driver of health. Access to housing, access to good jobs, access to health and social services. Those are the factors that determine who gets sick and who doesn't, who lives and who dies. That's what structural racism is. COVID just exposed this.
Cressy says the new response plan aims to address the inequities and protect Black Torontonians, and to help reduce the number of cases and address the issues around vaccine hesitancy within Black communities. The city has partnered with community agencies and also developed the Black Scientist Task Force on Vaccine Equity.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 9:38. We're less than 24 hours away from Super Bowl 55. Will New England fans be watching? Brady's departure from the Patriots coming full circle as he plays the big game with his new team tomorrow. 680's Simon Bennett has more.
Quarterbacks are the big story this weekend. Of course, Tom Brady in the big game for the 10th time, a 6-time champion. But it's different now. At age 43, doing it for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the first time. For how Patriots fans might be feeling, we found a breakup coach, Natalia Juarez.
You want to know that your ex is also kind of hurting and also to
see
them excelling before you. There is this concept of him winning the breakup, and in this case, he literally
is winning the breakup.
So what do you do if you're a Patriots fan? Do you watch?
This is going to be hard. So if you can't watch it, don't watch it. Now, if you decide
Confused. They are.
Better check if your girl's still okay. Fine. You don't want to hear my stupid joke. She's a breakup coach. You might want to check if your girl's talking to this girl.